Hi, everyone, and welcome to the first official Souls on Fire podcast. I'm your host, Aaron Thorpe, and I'm joined today by my brother, David Thorpe. We're talking a little bit today about my journey through how I became a coach, how I got interested in shadow work, how I became interested or learned about a lot of the plant medicines I learned about, and how that journey kind of started. And that was in large part thanks to my brother. I had been looking into, psychedelics, how they affected the mind, watching various documentaries, and I'd heard about ayahuasca. And then coincidentally, my brother had called me and asked me if I would be willing to go with him to Peru to go into the jungle and try it. So without further ado, my brother Dave, I'm curious, what made you look into ayahuasca? Like, what started you down that path?
Wow, that's a big question. So, disclaimer, my camera's up there and I'm gonna be looking right here. So in 2014, I ended up getting divorced or beginning that process anyway. And it really kind of leveled me. I ended up like the first 6 weeks, I was drunk from the time I woke up to the time I went to bed. And I came home one day and realized that I couldn't drink anymore. I was still working, I was functioning amazing. But I realized I couldn't do this no more. I was going to jiu-jitsu drunk. I mean, every part of my life was drunk. And so I realized I couldn't do this no more. And I had to get kind of like cleaned up. So I was trying to better myself, but I guess I had bad influences. So to kind of fast forward through some of that, I ended up, at this point, I was a jiu-jitsu kids coach. And I remember this woman had walked in and I thought, oh my God, I want to bang that chick. So I kind of, because I'm single and so I kind of, I start.
Everyone understands.
Yeah, I start flirting with her, start doing all this stuff. And we ended up going on a date. And on this date, I mean, I couldn't remember if we ate, had drinks. I don't remember anything, but I could remember like every single thing she was wearing. I could remember the conversation. I could remember everything about it. And I knew this was like a completely different human than I've ever dealt with. And so I really wanted to pursue this woman. Well, in the process of us dating, a lot of weaknesses or flaws or strengths, however you want to label them, were kind of identified to me. I had never felt love from another human on that level, except from my kids. I never felt it from my parents. I never felt it from my ex-wife. I had never felt love before. And so the way this person was, it was challenging me to be a better person, but I had no skills. I had zero skill set because I had so much damage, so much baggage, so much pain, so many things involved that were just making me the shitty boyfriend that I was. And because she was coming from a place like of just pure love, I realized that something inside me was going to have to change in order for this to work. In order for that little boy inside of me that was always happy and loving and playing, for that to come out, something was going to have to change in order for me to do that. So I started down this slow growth process. Reading books, I ended up becoming vegan, trying to clean all the toxins out of my body. I stopped drinking like 100%. I eliminated caffeine. I mean, I was just really trying to clear any toxin out of my body, but that didn't fix the shadow work part of it. So I remember I was on Instagram one day and I was helping my buddy with some side jobs, and he was pretty conscious, and I was scrolling through my feed and it said ayahuasca calls to you. It's not something you seek. So me being, the nerd I am, I researched it. I watched YouTube videos. I did everything I can. And it kind of talked about how it takes, the example I gave was if you were bit by a dog as a child, you might fear dogs and not even know why. So what the ayahuasca does is it goes back into that part where you had that intersection of fearing dogs, and it just repairs it so you can have a new experience. So thinking about all these broken things, all these broken experiences that was stopping me from growing and moving forward and being, coming from a point of pure love, I start looking into ayahuasca. Now, how you got involved, I don't know if you remember, but at the time you were in,
Pueblo.
I don't want to say fresh back from Iraq. I think you've been back a few years.
Oh yeah, but I was still very much so affected by PTSD.
Very much.
Yes.
And it was like at that point, 90% of our conversations were just how hurt and damaged you were.
Yep.
And so I had reached out to you and I said, look, dude, I need to do this thing. I want you to go with me. And you're like, I can't afford it. Dude, don't worry, I got you. Like, we both have a lot of trauma. We both need to heal, for you have your reasons, I have mine, but this is something we need to do. And that's how I ended up moving forward and found ayahuasca.
So, question, something you said earlier, you said when you were looking through Instagram and you had come across this post that described this process of, the example of the dog, and then ayahuasca goes back and repairs, whatever that trauma was. I'm curious if you were prepared for what that repair work looked like, or actually was, as in the process of actually doing ayahuasca, and how, I guess, intense you had to feel that work.
So, at this point, I'd watched every YouTube video. I think Alan Watts talked about it. There's someone else, he's like, I forget what his name is, but he's done every drug possible. He talked a lot about it. So at this point, I had knew that you could go to a ceremony and it'd be very, very, very traumatic and dark and terrible. Or you can go to one where it's more of a love based. So it all kind of depends upon how the facilitator, the shaman, it depends on the energy there and how they conduct their environment. So yes, I was terrified after watching all those videos, doing all that research, knowing that I think we all know our demons, right? I think we all know what we're capable of. So knowing what was inside of me, I was actually pretty terrified of going.
Yeah, I had heard a little bit about it, and it was kind of, I'd watched that documentary. I looked up a few YouTube videos rather. And a lot of people described when you puke, they would see, these serpents being puked out of them. One lady described it as like this horror show where anything you fear, it's like you sit down and you watch this horror show, but everything's okay, right? And so I didn't really look into it. I was like, oh, you know what? I'll be fine. I don't care, just kind of nonchalant. Wasn't prepared for it. I didn't even follow the diet. I think that's why, remember Cambo? It was like they were exercising a demon out of me. And then my first night on ayahuasca, the cleansing, like, dude, I was just back and forth on the toilet for like 4 or 5 hours. And anyway, so I just nonchalantly went into it with not knowing what was going to happen, because I'd watched a few videos, and I can say I was not prepared. Like, I was not at all prepared for what was going to happen. But so curious, have you traveled? I don't think you've traveled out of the States before Peru.
No, that was the first time out of the country. And I think prior to that, I mean, I'd worked out of California a couple times. I lived in Hawaii briefly, but out of the country, no.
So how was that process of, okay, now I'm jumping on a flight to the middle of South America?
So I remember thinking, like, dude, I don't want to get locked up in a third world jail. I remember thinking that. So honestly, I was pretty scared. I was nervous about a lot of things, and it's not even like we're going to a resort in Peru. We're going to Iquitos, which is something I've never experienced. It's beautiful, but something I've never experienced. And then we're getting on a boat and going X amount of hours into the middle of nowhere to the jungle. Drive it. Oh, we can't get close to that coast because the drug dealers on that coast. It's like, so there was a lot. I was nervous about quite a few things.
Yeah, I definitely.
I remember like my martial arts training and stuff like that, and then how I didn't back down from fights. I remember thinking like, dude, don't end up in a third world jail. You're not gonna like it.
It was interesting. The kind of when I landed and got to Iquitos, I had a very similar experience where, again, I just kind of nonchalant, didn't really give a shit, floating through life, don't care. But when I got out of because my flight was delayed, so we didn't meet up in Lima like we were supposed to. I get to Iquitos super late at night. It's like 11 o'clock at night. And when I got out of the airport, there's a line of those tuk-tuk drivers. And I said, hey, I'm going to Hotel La Casonia on 47 Fitzgerald. And they're like, all right, this guy's going to take you. And it's like, okay. So you hop on the back of this tuk-tuk and he's driving down alleys and just, it's the middle of the night. And I'm just like, dude, this could be it. He could stop in a group of people and I'm done,
Yeah. Yeah, I had that similar feeling too. I remember I went to a restaurant. It took me like 2 minutes to get there on, the back of someone's motorcycle. And then when I wanted to get home, it took like 30 minutes. And I'm like, okay, this dude's going to rob me or something. And my mind's immediately like, okay, he's getting it immediately. And then the first person, oh, what if it, so yeah, there was a lot of that. A lot of
the fight that's to come.
Yeah.
So, okay, so now we make it. Do you remember when they took us down to the boat? So that was one of the more interesting things was where they took us down to the boat. We ride we go to where we went to. They picked us up. We went to van, and then we left the van and we got on these motorcycles. And then we were on the motorcycles for so long. And then they stuffed us inside of a warehouse, and there were like people watching the doors. And it was like, dude, this is it. Like, they're like, go ahead and put your bags over here. Like, oh shit, we're all getting harvested now or something. But then, so we finally make it to the center, get out there, gorgeous. I mean, oh my God, just floating through the Amazon River. And now we drop our stuff, and I don't remember what time it was, but it was like, hey, ceremony starts in like 2 hours. Right. So then, okay, talk now through what was that like? Now it's game day, right? There's all these fears. You plowed through them. You made it. It was legit. Now you got to go drink.
Yeah. So first, we put our bags down, and it takes me a while to talk to people because I'm always like feeling everyone out first, and everyone's talking, and I'm kind of on my own, and a couple people kind of had a weird vibe about them. So anyways, we go to the flower ceremony where the shaman's wife bathes you. You're in your underwear or your shorts? I don't remember.
Swim trunks, yeah.
Yeah, you get bathed in some type of flower water before you can even go into the ceremony or to the Maloka. And so we set our stuff down. I'm looking around. Cool place. It reminded me of something out of like Resident Evil 5, All the structures were suspended and there's growth and vegetation. I mean, it's a really beautiful place, but we go through that flower ceremony and then it's straight into the Maloka. And that's when it's like, oh man, this is real. And immediately my mind's going back to all those YouTube videos I watched.
And then so keep going. What was it like when you were sitting there in front of the shaman and he hands you the cup?
Okay, so the process is I don't remember how many people, but I assume
12.
There's 8. There's 12?
Yep. They cap it at 12.
12 people participated?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so there's 12 people participating, and then there was the 2 facilitators. I think one was Australian, one was English. Marco, I don't remember the woman's name.
Cece.
And then there was, what was her name?
Cece.
Right. And then there was the shaman and his wife. So they say, you want a whole cup or a half cup. Obviously everybody did a whole cup, but then when you go get your first drink, you're supposed to give them an offering of some cigarettes or something. And so, you go, you kneel, he pours it for you, you drink it, you go sit back down. Now they said it could take place, or your experience could begin within, I don't know, 30 minutes to an hour. So I'll preface something real quick about whatever I say for any of your viewers. Maybe you're not going to believe it. That's fine. Go try it. So anyways, I sit down, I take my drink, I sit down. Hour goes by, I feel absolutely nothing. So people are starting to throw up. The woman next to me is freaking out because she hears vibration in her ear. So, and I'm having zero reaction, and we're 2 hours in now, and I'm having zero reaction. So I just closed my eyes for a minute, and it was like, and I ended up witnessing the energy go into my mom's egg, and I witnessed my birth. It was the craziest thing ever. Like, I witnessed being formed, coming out of my mom, the doctor grabbing me, doing his thing, and handing me to our dad. And it was like everything was either, the colors were either black or they were like kind of like a bronze. It was really weird. And so I opened my eyes. I don't know how long that process took, but I opened my eyes and I was like, man, that was crazy. It was so vivid. Wasn't like I imagined it. It was just so vivid. So then I had to go to the bathroom, like number 2. I had to do that 20 times that night. And it got to where it was just so exhausting and so draining. And, I ended up, there was a point, everyone's thrown up, and I hadn't thrown up once. And there was a point where I was, on the walkway between the bathroom and the Maloka, and Marco would come out and he's like, hey, dude, you got to come inside. The shaman's going to start, making his way around. And I said, dude, I can't get away from the bathroom. I don't understand. And he had said, well, your body's a lot cleaner than everyone else's. That's how they're ejecting all the toxins. But because your body's so clean, because I had been vegan for 6-8 months, a year, I don't know. I've been 0 alcohol for 6 months. I've had no caffeine for 4 months. I mean, my body was just clean. He goes, that's the proper way to clean out your body, but I need you to come back inside. So you got to go to the bathroom one more time. This is the last time, but I need you to come back inside. I'm like, all right, I'm on. Like 2 minutes and I'll be in there. And I remember looking up at the sky, seeing the sky a way I'd never seen before. It was like it was alive. You could touch it. It was crazy. But I looked up at the sky, and I remember thinking nobody looks up anymore, right? Because we're looking down at our phones, or we're looking down at our bills or our material things or whatever like that. I just remember thinking nobody looks up anymore. And so when I looked down, I seen these super tall, shadowy figures 10 feet away in between the leaves. Now, the jungle there, for anyone that hasn't been there, you walk 2 feet into the jungle, you're gone.
You're dead.
It's super, super thick. You could walk 5 feet in, if you don't know your way out, bye. So I go back in, I sit down, the shaman makes his way to the first person. He sings, blows some stuff in your face, and then he moves over to the next person, and then his wife comes. He does a similar thing. It's a different song. Boom, 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 goes all the way around. Now, mind you, at this time, I've still had no visions. So he starts singing and blowing stuff, still no visions. He moves, she comes over, and it was like, I was gone. I was in this kaleidoscope of geometrical shapes, colors, flowers, all these just crazy things going on. So then she leaves, and I start, what I see, I see like the mother ayahuasca come to me. And it was it was very natural, earth, but yet also like a sci-fi type picture. And she had come to me and was like, I want to take you into my temple and show you some things. So I kind of seen some visions, and we talked about a few things. And then she said, tomorrow we got a lot of work to do. And she touched my head, and I had that vision again of being born coming out. And I thought, that's so weird, but it was a different color. It was like a bluish or something. It was a different color. And I thought, man, that's so weird. I already had that vision. And then the thought came in my head, no, this is you being born today. So that was the end of that night. I don't know how that first night was for you, but that's how my first night.
Mine, well, so again, I didn't follow any of those suggestions. I think I was drinking a Monster energy drink on the plane down there and eating a bag of Doritos. You know what I mean? So my first night was mostly constant purging. Huh. There was one interesting thing though. You talk about our dad and kind of the trauma we had growing up. My first experience, I had started puking, and before the whole bathroom stuff started, I was back in dad's truck the night. So he had kicked me out. I told him I wasn't going to meetings anymore, and he's like, you can't live here. So I moved into grandma's little studio. And that night that I was moving all my stuff, he said, hey, I'll give you a ride. All right. So I jump in his truck. And when we get in his truck, he turns to me and he said, you will never amount to anything. This world is going to eat you alive and you will be nothing. Right. And so I got out of his truck and I walked through the desert that night, holding all my shit, walked to grandma's house. So there, I had that flashback. Like I was sitting back in dad's truck. And like you said, like it is not like, it's not like a daydream. It's not, you're there. You are there witnessing these things again. And then there was a very interesting, I'll share this story with you another time. There's a quick little vision that happened. But then it was mostly purging the rest of the night. I had no other visions. It was, holding a bucket, sitting on the toilet. Except one time, I don't know if you know this. Did you see when I was down there, I got cut, like I had a giant cut on my shoulder?
I seen it in the morning. I don't.
So
I don't
somehow,
remember it, but I do see it in the morning.
you remember how small those porta potties were? I was sitting on the toilet and there's like maybe not even a whole foot gap between the toilet and the side. And I was sitting on the toilet with my bucket and something happened. And I wound up to where I was stuffed head first down on the side of the toilet. Like something had stuffed me, like picked me up, turned me over and shoved me down there. Like my head was against the wall and my whole body was weird. It's like you couldn't fall over and do that. So that was a really weird experience. And then, that was pretty much it for me. That first night, there was one quick vision, and it was mostly paying for the consequences of not keeping my temple clean.
Right.
So what now the next day, right? You wake up and now everyone's kind of talking about, oh, hey, what just happened last night? Now, what are you thinking about your experience with ayahuasca and the things you saw the night before?
Okay, so we wake up in the morning, we go eat. So I have information overload at this point. So I go in, I eat, I wash my dishes, and then I go kind of off into the jungle, and I'm just quiet and by myself for hours. And I'm like, man, that was a lot of stuff to process, because it was like layer on layer on layer on layer on layer of just information. And you're thinking about this layer, but then this layer is also processing, and then this layer's in the back. And I was just overloaded with information. So I was quiet the whole day, just trying to process it. But I think around 11 o'clock, everyone met in the Maloka and they were sharing their experience. And so when a lot of people were speaking about their experience, I just remember thinking, like, how can you speak on this when I can't even process what happened? You know, I think I'm pretty intelligent, and I'm like, man, I'm so overloaded with information. How are they just, oh, I seen this and meant this, and I seen this and blah 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 blah. And some of it was pretty far fetched. But some of the people were pretty, you know, in tune, I guess. But I was quiet the whole time. I was quiet the whole day. I was just quiet, right? I needed a long time to process all that information. And after that, everybody kind of hung out. And I, you know, laid in my cot, and you know, I ended up reading a book, and then, you know, 5, 6, whatever time rolls around, it's time for another flower bath. Which moves me into night 2. Night 2 was interesting. So night 2, we drink. I ended up making sure I sat next to you this night, which was actually a mistake. So night 2, I wasn't throwing up. I wasn't going to the bathroom. Literally nothing was going on. And I remember they did an exercise like before, I think right after we drank, or maybe right before we drank. I don't remember, but I think it was right after we drank. They did like a laughing exercise.
Oh, laughing yoga. Yeah.
Yeah. So when we were doing that, very immediate after drinking, I was flying. It was like I was flying or floating or whatever on some clouds. But the clouds were made up of children's laughter. And so I was in an amazing spot. And then I wasn't. So at that point, one of the participants there had a very powerful experience, and he started losing it, to say the least. So his experience, he was, you know, screaming and yelling, and there was 2 other men that were staying there who kind of just minded their own business, but they ended up having to come in and trying to do him. He ran out of the Maloka, and at one point he got under the Maloka, and they ended up getting him out. I mean, he's just freaking out at whatever he's going through. So it was pretty overwhelming, just how traumatic his experience was. That at this point, I decided to go to the bathroom. I'm like, I need a break from whatever's going on here. So I go to the bathroom. I ended up blacking out. My pants are down. I blacked out. Boom, hit the floor. I open my eyes. That Australian kid was like, "Dude, are you okay? You okay?" And I come to. I'm like, "Yeah, I'm fine." And I look over, and now they're still trying to subdue that dude. And they got him pinned against the rail, and they're all trying to talk him down. And I go lean on this other rail, and I'm watching this whole thing go down. I'm like, this sucks. And it started raining. And it was weird the impact that the rain had, because when it started raining, it just kind of put the entire moment on pause. And I knew that was going to be a defining moment in my life for the rest of my life. It was going to be something I'd remember forever. But long story short, I get back in the Maloka, I sit down, they bring him in, he's somewhat calm, but then that dude from Iceland starts spazzing out. And he's standing up and he's freaking out and he's doing all this weird stuff. And then I look over and you're right next to me, and I mean, you're just full blown crying. And I'm like, dude, what the frick am I doing down here? Like, this whole freaking situation is just not good. I'm like every YouTube video I watched, nothing went down like this. So I was like, this is not good. So I was focusing so hard to bring myself out of it. And I wasn't, I had my eyes closed, nothing. I was trying to focus my way out of it. And at that time, I seen a shadow jaguar walk through the Maloka. And I'm like, oh, great, I'm tripping. Then I seen that big ass, whatever it was, creature that was inside the jungle walk through and go stand by that dude from Iceland. And I'm like, oh man, this is not good. And the whole time I'm looking at the shaman, and his wife, and they're like huddled down and they're praying. I mean, they're doing some crazy stuff, like warding off spirits or something. And I'm like, it's all bad. This is all bad.
What have I gotten myself into?
Yeah, and I'm looking at you, and the Iceland dude stands up, and he's kind of like walking around the circle to us, and I'm like, okay, if this dude gets close to my brother who's crying loud, like I'm gonna have to. And I was like, this freaking sucks. So the night ends, I go to bed. Same thing. We eat breakfast. Everyone goes to discuss kind of what happened that night. So everybody the day before, everyone was like so excited to talk.
Mhm.
But because of what happened the night before, that the dude that really freaked out, I think everyone was terrified of him.
Yeah, he
So
didn't say anything.
no one said nothing. So I kind of opened with a joke to kind of break the ice and got everybody laughing, talking about that guy, how he was freaking out. I said, oh, you reminded me of one of them, things that sells cars with balloons. And so
Wacky inflatable.
laughing. Yeah, so everybody got laughing and kind of discussed their stuff. Now, 3 or 4 people, while they were talking about their experience, said, hey, anyone see that panther or jaguar or whatever walk in? Yeah, did anyone see that freaking big giant spirit thing that walked in and stood over? I'm like, oh boy. Nobody said nothing yet. Nobody's talked to each other, and they're all talking about all these things that everyone's seen together. And I was like, okay. Not only are we dealing with these outside forces of whatever, but we're also dealing with all the baggage these people brought, and here I have all my baggage, and I'm like, this is not good. Like, if I lose my shit like this dude, someone's getting hurt. So at that point, I was really kind of scared of moving forward.
Yeah, I can definitely there's so much to unpack there, right? Because again, you go into this and it's like, oh man, there's going to be this healing journey. I took ayahuasca and I got sat in front of a show and watched these horrible things, but I was okay. And then there's things going on in the Maloka and you're like, is this real or am I fucking tripping out? Like again, when let's call him Todd jumps up and he's like, Christ consciousness, God, where are you? And then he like kicks over the table with a candle on it.
Oh yeah.
I was like, dude, what the fuck? Like, what? Like, okay, is this real? Like, do I actually need to be worried or am I on a fucking vision quest? Right. But then, yeah, as soon as he did that, I started processing all my war trauma. And like, I described that a lot, so I won't go through it here, but that was fucking like, I just cried the whole night. Like, it was like you can't breathe because you're crying so hard. And so all this stuff is going on. And then the next day, like you said, what was interesting, and this happened multiple times, was, there's these experiences that you had. Like you saw a fucking jaguar run through the Maloka. Okay, Dave, right? It sounds fantastical. But then the next day, every night, there would be these experiences. Everyone, or multiple people experience this. So it's like, well, okay, this isn't just some drug I took and it's making me hallucinate things that aren't real. Like, these are things, it's a shared experience, right? That's the definition of proof, right? So so that was very interesting. But yeah, after that first night and you go to drink that second night, you're just like, I don't know if I want to do, like, I don't even know if I can do this. And then yeah, it's just like the second, oh yeah, every time it just gets, it's like, dude, what kind of shit show am I going to see next? Like, what's going to happen?
Which goes great into the third night, because my shit show was the third night. So same thing happens. We flower bath, drink. I remember the third night was the first time that I thought I threw up. And so I was heaving, but it wasn't vomit coming out. It was like this long vine that was like black. It looked like something Indiana Jones would swing from the next tree, or Tarzan would swing from the next tree, like a vine, like super thick. And I just kept pulling it and pulling it and pulling it. And I remember thinking at some point, because I had been heaving for a while, that my bucket is probably full. They gave everybody a bucket to throw up in. I thought my bucket's probably full, and I looked down and there was nothing in there. I'm still heaving, super loud, super intense. And I end up, the last tug, I'm like, I can't vomit anymore. This is like hurting, right? Like my stomach hurts, everything hurts. I said, I'm just gonna rip whatever this is. And I yanked really hard to rip it out. And that's where my demon came out. And so inside of me, I seen this thing. It's hard to describe it. It had like a scorpion's body, but it had, different type of arms and pinchers, and it was just wild, but it had my face. And it was like, this is what you're gonna have to deal with tonight. And it was surrounded by electricity, and there was just so much stuff going on. And I remember looking at it, and I remember in my mind, like, do I have the energy right now to battle this thing? And then I had another conversation where it was like, dude, that's the source of all your power. The reason you're so successful, what you've done in your outside life. I had, been homeless before, and dug my way out to a management position at a company that you literally have to be like the Navy SEAL of bridge builders to even move up there. In my mind, I was like, that's my source of energy. And so I came across the road where it was like, okay, you can battle this thing or you could jar it back up. And I thought, incorrectly at the time, I thought that's my source of energy. That's what makes me able to deal with all this stuff. So I bottled it up. So that was the end of my night. So the same thing happens. We eat breakfast, go in the Maloka and talk. And that day, Natasha and the guy from Iceland, what was his name?
Olafsson.
Yeah.
Olafur.
Natasha and Olaf had started talking about an experience, how they were above the crowd dancing. And one said, oh, I felt like I was dancing with Natasha. And the other one said, yeah, wow, that's so weird. I felt like I was dancing with you. Like,
and they had a whole conversation in that
about their
realm too.
Same thing. It was the weirdest thing. So then Natasha starts saying like, oh man, I was like going over everybody, blah, 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 blah. And this is what I seen. And when she got to me, she started crying. Like uncontrollably crying. And she goes, dude, I've seen all that trauma you went through. Like I realized everything that you witnessed as a child, and she can't even stop crying. She's like, I'm so sorry how bad you've been hurt. And I was, at the time, I was like, I ain't hurt, I'm not gonna show it. But inside I was like, I was about to cry myself. Because she was speaking on things that I've never told anyone. But I was pretending it didn't affect me, and I could not wait to get out of that Maloka. So that when she had spoke about those things, that really had a huge impact, and really magnified all the things that I've carried for so long that made me the jerk boyfriend, or made me the dad that pushes too hard, or made me the supervisor that, the perfection was standard, and if you didn't make it, you were fired. It all came back from that trauma. And when she had spoke about my childhood, I really had a huge impact.
Yeah, that is interesting how much I've come to appreciate also, the things we can sit there and talk about kind of our childhood and how our dad was. And if you tell anyone the story of our upbringing, there's not a person that listens to it and is like, man, sounds like you did a great job. Um, right. It's just, and it's the craziest stuff because it just defies reason. Some of the things that, because of whatever religion, spiritual beliefs they have, it's just craziness. And so you can sit there and look at it and be like, well, I understand, I should not be taking my cues from a psychopath. You know what I mean? There's no reason for me to judge myself based on just these crazy ideals. But that doesn't actually change that trauma, right? It doesn't unlock those things, like you said, that we carry around with us that causes us to either think less of ourselves, or, be more demanding of others, or, react negatively when someone tries to show us love because we don't know what it looks like. And it's fascinating. It's fascinating to me. Like, just like that night sitting in dad's truck, where he said, you'll never amount to anything. Like, I know this is a guy that has lied, cheated, and stole everything in his life. Right. And that is not a good measuring stick. You know what I mean? I could measure myself so much more, or you get what I'm trying to say. I'm failing it to articulate this, but you understand. And so I'm curious, after this experience you've described with ayahuasca, what would you say is your next goal, I guess, in that self-improvement process, right? So what's next in identifying those things now for you to break those habits, or break those, whatever holds these traumas have on you?
So I think, there's any of the people that are rich they'll say, show me your group and I'll show you where you're gonna be in 5 years, or they'll say something like,
Sure.
you want to be rich, surround yourself with people that talk about money, or whatever. So I think that's also important. Um, you know, men's mental health is rarely discussed, and growing up, it was like you just sucked it up, like, oh man, this thing, oh, be a man up, Um, so I think, especially in 2017 when we went, men's mental health was not really spoke about the way it is now.
Sure.
So as far as moving forward, in the same way that, I told you in the past, I don't hang out with certain people if they're talking about things that are, not going to help me move forward to the goals that I want to make. But I also, on that growth mindset of healing trauma, I don't hang out with people that are negative, that gossip, drink too much, because I want to grow every day. I want to be better than I was yesterday.
Sure.
I know at some point I'm going to have to go. I mean, I think I said it to you when we were there, and I was like, I skipped the last 2 sessions, and I had told you, I said, no, this has, for me, this has to stop. But I know in about 5 years, I have to come back and take care of that thing. For me, I just try to surround myself with positive people that I can uplift. And then when I'm down, people that could, lift me up too.
Mm-hmm.
I have a couple really good friends. You and I talk nonstop about growth. I have another friend, people that'll tell me, straight, hey, you're wrong, or you're looking at this
dumbass. Come on.
Yeah, don't be a dumbass. Like, dude, it's you. It's you. You're doing the stupid thing. Pull your head out of your ass.
Yep.
Or no, you're reading the situation wrong. Or no, that person's toxic. Or whatever the case may be. That's how I continue to grow. And for me, I don't watch a lot of TV. I have an Instagram, but I'm never on it. I stay away from social media, and I try and spend as much time as I can with loved ones or in books.
So again, a whole lot to unpack there, right? The concept, what you're talking about, controlling your environment and who has access to your energy. this whole concept of what we keep on our mind. What do you focus on daily? What is the story? Joe Dispenza talks about this. Whatever your mind's going to create, everyone's talked about this. Your mind creates reality. And so what are your thoughts kind of constantly on? And if you're sitting next to someone who's like, just giving you the highlights of the newsreel for this week, your brain's going to go to a very negative place, as opposed to if you're sitting next to someone who is, hyper focused on building a business, again, that's going to determine what your mindset's doing. And again, this concept, you touched on it a little about the, how it's almost like, being a man has been demonized, and just completely, men have been over feminized, right? In the way that we're allowed to act because it's dangerous or whatever. The point you made earlier, though, was about mental health, because men were just expected to kind of suck it up, right? And Tim and I talked about this a little bit, how, modern psychology, from the standpoint of veterans, if you go to the VA, you don't actually really get a whole lot of help. It's more traumatizing than it is helpful. And so, being hyper focused on that and understanding that, and like you said, control your circle, control what you're talking about, and then having that friend, right, who's going to tell you, hey man, you're being a dumbass, right? Because all too often, again, this kind of culture we live in, we want to create safe spaces, and I don't think we need safe spaces, right? If you go climb a tree and you fall out, it needs to hurt when you hit the ground. That way you learn, like, oh shit, I got to get my grip better here. Or if you're practicing jujitsu and the guy catches you with a right leg, like, shit, I had my fucking guard down. You're going to have to feel that, if you were to stop and be like, ha, almost got you, that wouldn't really be as valuable as a lesson. Right. So, all good stuff.
I think something that I really took away from ayahuasca, when you think about, it's nice to have nice things, right?
Sure.
I have a lot of nice things, but they don't matter. I have a good job, I make money, but it doesn't matter. Like, none of that's real, and none of it's going with me. So something that really kind of ayahuasca reset me on was, we are all connected, whether it's poor or rich or have or have not, whatever the case may be, we're all connected and we are all having the same experience. When I'm thinking, oh, I'm having a bad day and this person doesn't understand. Yeah, they're probably having a bad day too, and they do understand. And so that really helped me ayahuasca really helped me kind of connect with everyone a little bit more.
Mm-hmm.
Realize that we're all in this together, and not focus on the things that really don't matter. It's important. I have to provide and create legacy. It's more important to have the human connection.
I would absolutely agree with that. That the basically, just how much are you giving to everyone around you? Jesus, I'm obviously, this, I'm very spiritual, so I use a lot of Bible references, but Jesus talked about that when the scribes came to him and they said, oh Lord, we're so sorry. And he said, dude, when I was hungry, you didn't give me anything to eat, and when I was cold, you didn't clothe me. And they were all confused, like, what are you talking about? We ain't never seen you hungry or cold. And he said, whatever you do to my brother, you also do to me. Right. And so just that concept of knowing, like you said, we're all in this together. Focus on your stuff, get stuff, but add value and move more towards an inclusive society, which I could go on a tangent about that for a long time. So,
it's funny you said that too, because I remember thinking before,
mm-hmm.
I remember, like, if I seen a homeless person, especially a male, who was capable of working, I would never give him money. I'd be like, dude, I've been homeless. Dig deep. You could get out of whatever you're going through. So I never would. After, it's like, I feel sorry for almost, I don't know if you remember the call yesterday. I wanted to give this dude money, but he was having some
Yeah, I
Weird.
remember.
That was terrible. But now I look at homeless people and it's like empathy and sympathy, and I want to help. And I don't know what they're going through, but I want to help. I don't know why they're in that situation. Could be drugs, but if it's drugs, it's some trauma that got them there.
Exactly.
Um,
All too often we demonize where a person is, not understanding that under the same circumstances, we'd probably be in the same place.
Yeah. I mean, we're all one bad decision away from being in a bad spot.
That's very true. Very true. So do you plan, you said you want to go do ayahuasca again. I think I heard that.
Yeah, it'll happen again.
And
I don't think with you though.
oh no.
No, it's that protective nature and
What are you talking about, dude? I'm totally ready. If you have your freak out, like I'm gonna bring a fucking 2x4. I already told you what's gonna happen. If you lose your shit, like I'm gonna sneak up behind you, clock you in the back of the head, turn your lights out.
why would I want to get hit with a 2x4?
Don't freak out.
Okay, I'm making note of that. But no, I plan on doing it again sooner than later. I have a couple other trips planned, but yeah, sooner than later. Growing and being a better person should be everyone's goal rather
Absolutely.
than having the best car or whatever. But yeah, eventually it'll happen again.
Yeah. It is it's an interesting thing because it's like you need to do it, but again, you know exactly what you're walking into. Now having experienced it and knowing how terrifying it can be and just the entire process, right? You're in the middle of the jungle, the food sucks, you're getting bit by bugs you didn't know existed. Just like, and we were in denim hammocks, and they'd bite you, and you had jeans on, they'd bite you through the hammock and your jeans. You're just like, dude, what? So anyway, it's
funny that you mentioned that, you know what you're getting into. I know exactly what I'm getting into. And it's unfortunately that thing I bottled up. I know exactly what I'm getting into. So yep. I know the things that I got to deal with the next time. I could say though, I don't think as many people there had as an intense experience, but I think everybody that has gone through ayahuasca you're not the same person again.
Oh no, there's no way. Because like you said, right, there's different levels. You got all this information and there's things that happen to us that it kind of goes in and it repairs those things. But it's like oh gosh, what is that game, Othello, right? So you put the little black pieces and the white pieces down, and if you connect them, right, you flip all the other pieces. You know what I'm talking about?
Yep.
So it's like there's just all these changes going on from all these different levels of understanding where all these rows just keep getting flipped, and you don't even know how to. This is funny. I've told several people this recently, where on the bus ride down, right? So when we go out to Peru and they pick us up in the van and we're all in the van, we're like, oh my God, where are you from? Oh, that's so awesome. What's it like in Australia? What's Iceland like? Yeah, everyone's all happy. Dude, the van ride out of the jungle,
it's silent.
Fucking complete silence. Nobody was talking. Nobody was saying shit. Everybody was just processing just the immense amount of shit they just had to witness, right? And their own trauma.
What's funny is the fact that things will come up, like you'll have these. It's some information you received in the Maloka, but it's a year later, boom, that thing pops up, or months later. And it's funny because we went in 2017, and last month I was in Hawaii, and I had one of those moments where the ayahuasca had opened up in my brain and just started revealing all these things. And it was probably an hour I was just processing information. And that happened from the day I got back to a month ago of just, there'll be these moments where this information that was put in there, planted in there, is now being processed. So it's an interesting experience.
So yeah, a couple things to that, right? Marco had mentioned something about that where you'll have experiences long after, because now Mother Ayahuasca is with you, so to speak. Like they very much so believe in this which again, you met Mother Ayahuasca. I had my own vision of her. She looked like the grandma tree from the movie Pocahontas. Like that's how my brain interpreter was, just this. Anyway, and even with Cambo, right? I was talking to, I share Cambo with folks, and one gal had reached out and said, hey, I'd like to do another session. And the day she was thinking about having the session, she had this huge Cambo, like she got the medicine. She didn't get the medicine, but she started puking as if she did. And so she wanted me to ask Natasha about it. So I reached out and she said, oh, absolutely. Like if Cambo's a part of you, the medicines they stay with you. It's like these spirits are now also invested in
Energies.
Yes, absolutely. Right. Like Mother Earth wants people who are going to care about other people and take care of Mother Earth. Right. So it's like, absolutely. They stay with you, and it's not always a substance kind of thing. It's something beyond, what is in the school textbooks.
Yeah, and I think, that's a good point, because when you think about, I think some people probably, so when I was setting this up and booking our stay there, some places require, some don't, but this one in particular, like they had to accept you. If you were coming down thinking you're going to get high, or you wanted an acid trip or whatever the case, you couldn't get in this one.
Right.
Because that's not what this is about. It's not about getting high. This is about
wake up, grow up,
waking up. Yep.
Yep.
So yeah, I'd recommend it. I mean, if it calls to you, you definitely need to go. And if you have, you've been in therapy for a while and you're making no ground, or you have some trauma like me. I had trauma, and I had, like I said, I was dating this woman that I had zero skill set. And I was being very crappy, and I was like, look, I know there's this solid, loving dude inside there, but there's all this blockage.
Yep.
So,
all
I
those
would recommend it for anyone like that.
All the negative comments you got that you don't even remember. Right. Like, and
exactly.
Yep. Those things that are stuck, those nights in the truck. Yeah. Well, thanks. I think we're about at our time now. Thank you so much for joining. I'm sure I will have you on a lot more, and we'll probably talk for 2 hours after this. First time I've done this, so I'm just going to close this out with saying hit that like and subscribe, and join us next time on Souls on Fire.